But nonetheless, let's go to the English. Let's take a look at the English in the 17th century. And as we explore in later presentation on the Spanish conquest of the Western Hemisphere, while Spanish explorers are going to be claiming lands for the crown, and the Spanish church is going to be busy transforming native peoples into Spanish-speaking workers, remember the Spanish were here at least 100 to 120 years before the British. But meanwhile, the British colonies, by contrast, are going to be a combination of economic experiments in Virginia and family settlements in Massachusetts. Now, the English rarely incorporated native peoples in their societies. The English rarely made unions between natives and whites. In fact, those unions were looked down upon. Now, most often, the English segregated themselves from the native peoples. And New England Puritans did not even venture out of their settlements to win converts like the Spanish. English kings, under the influence of Protestantism, ordered their colonists to conquer, occupy, and possess the lands of the heathens and infidels, as they described them. And under Elizabeth I, the English confronted the Spanish on a number of fronts, leading to a showdown in 1588. In fact, it is this showdown that's going to allow England to finally come to the Western Hemisphere and search for settlements. Elizabeth identified Spain as a threat to their national church, now Protestant, and to their independence as a nation. So when we take a look at the 16th century, it was about plunder and exploration. But the 17th century witnessed the creation of colonies for the explicit expansion of European markets. So when we take a look at England between 1630 to 1700, approximately 600,000 immigrants are going to arrive here in North America in the 17th century. Approximately 155,000 English immigrants settled in the British colonies. Now, these English immigrants accounted for approximately 90% of European immigrants to the colonies. The next largest group was African, and they arrived not as voluntary immigrants, but as involuntary immigrants. And by being involuntary, their forced migration reduced the demand for labor of voluntary migrants from Europe. Now, what do I mean by involuntary immigrants? Well, I'm going to talk about labor recruitment. All of this gets us to the notion of forming and controlling labor forces for the expansion of colonial markets. This is so crucial in appreciating immigration. Labor recruitment is the key to migration of populations since the colonial period. Why is there an immigration policy? Because systems need workers. Now, the major distinction among European immigrants to the British colonies before the American Revolution related to the way in which they were able to afford passage to the colonies. Some were able to immigrate based on their own or their family resources. Generally, they had skills, or they had capital, or they worked in a specific profession as they occupied positions in an expanding colonial market. They were government officials, they were clergy, they were merchants, they were artisans, they were gentry, they were of the lesser nobility. But the majority, the mass of immigrants, came as indentured servants or as slaves. Now, the indentured servants required, let me just share with you the difference between indentured servants versus slavery. Indentures were required to perform, on average, 8 years of labor to repay the price of their passage. And because of a lack of capital and skills, they were forced to perform arduous labor. And many times, because of a lack of opportunity, their indentured status was extended. So for indentured servants, their only opportunity for success was the British elimination policy of native peoples from their land. Or if they wanted, they could run away from their oppressive master, and many times as they ran away, they went and joined native peoples' resistance movements. Let's go to a film clip that emphasizes the importance of indentured servitude to the creation of the United States. Author and worker cooperative member John Curl discusses the Mayflower Compact, indentured servants, and the English corporate investment in the colonial ventures. Now, his book entitled For All the People, Uncovering the Hidden History of Cooperation, Cooperative Movements, and Communalism in America is very important because it shares a very rich foundation of community in the British experience that is not often emphasized, especially in this capitalist world, because there is a communitarian, a communalist, a communist tradition. Let's take a look at the indentured servants.
This is the story of the Mayflower, actually, of the Pilgrim voyage. On 3 days before they, or 2 or 3 days before they landed, the majority of the people there, over 50%, were indentured servants. And they staged a revolt on board. And what came out of it is the famous document known as the Mayflower Compact, where all the people there were declared themselves equal, free and equal. They revolted against the form of servitude that most of them had been committed, had signed up to put themselves under. And through a revolt of revolutionary servants, the first New England colony, Plymouth, became a democracy of sorts. It was a limited democracy, but it was the most democratic society at that time in colonial America. Well, in the colonies, most of the colonies, or all of the British colonies, were really set up by corporations. And as soon as possible, people who were hooked into it, who were often indentured servants, where they signed up for passage for a certain number of years, they would have to work off the money that the passage cost, and then they were able to get off on their own. And as soon as they got out, and many of them just ran away from that form of bondage, and went off into the wilderness. So, but as soon as they got into their own communities, into small towns, small villages, they were basically cooperative communities there. The cooperation was and democratic procedures were basically the way they settled the country in the early years.